4 ways Joe Biden is sabotaging Donald Trump on his way out of office. And I would argue that number one, it's not just Biden. Number two, it's a lot more than 4. I could probably think of at least a dozen ways that they are sabotaging the White House, sabotaging Washington, D.C., sabotaging the government, and thereby sabotaging the nation for the sake of trying to protect their agenda while trying to subvert Trump's agenda before he even gets into power again. But then number 3, there is the notion that we don't know what we don't know. I mean, there are certain dozens, hundreds possibly, ways that the Biden regime is trying to sabotage the White House. And they have experience with this. A lot of them have experience because they tried to do the exact same thing or something similar back in 2016. The difference, though, the reason that I am much more, I don't want to say excited. That's the wrong word. I'm excited about finding ways that there are people in government trying to destroy us. No, I am emboldened. I'm hopeful. There we go. There's that really complex word. I'm very hopeful that this time around the new Trump administration, especially with people such as Susie Wiles, will be able to sniff out and expose and end subversions. Not all of them. There's no way they can get to all of them. But I'm just hoping that they're going to find the next Eric Charamella or whoever, and they're not going to hire another H.R. McMaster or whoever. They're going to do things much better than they did in 2017. But this article comes to us from glennbeck.com. The staff over there did a fantastic job of putting these 4 together, and I would say that 2 of them are big, 2 of them are not so big, but still worth noting. So let's just go through the list. President Biden has less than a week left in the White House, but that doesn't mean he's down for the count quite yet. Next Monday, January 20th, President-elect Trump will be officially sworn into office, marking the beginning of his second term. But after such a bitter and contentious election, the Democrats aren't ready to roll over. Instead, they have been working around the clock to ensure that Trump will face as many obstacles and challenges as possible the minute he is sworn in. These political landmines are designed to sabotage his presidency at the cost and well-being of the American people. Biden's approval rating, yada, yada, yada. Let's get to the list. Number 1, pardoning criminals. In November, President Biden customarily pardoned the Thanksgiving turkey along with his son Hunter and dozens of other controversial criminals, including 37 felons on death row. Hunter's 11-year-long blankets immunity sets a dangerous precedent for the future president, and we may never know the full extent of the Biden family's crimes and corruption. And that is the key there. It's not, when I first saw that on the list, I was thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to go after the criminals. Yes, that sucks, but that's not exactly sabotaging the White House, except it sort of is. Especially if they are using pardoning of Hunter Biden, using that as a way to cover up their crimes that perhaps the Trump administration would have wanted to go after had Hunter Biden not had immunity. So yeah, I agree with that one. Check. Number 2, and this is a big one, destroying U.S. energy. This is something that, we're seeing some good. I think California canceled their mandate for all electric trucks by whatever, some ludicrous deadline, because they were told that it wasn't going to be allowed. So they, instead of facing the futile uphill battle of trying to make that the thing, I guess they're just going to wait until the next Democrat is in the White House. But they're doing, the Biden administration, the regime is still doing quite a bit to try to hamper Trump's energy policy. Biden has made several moves that have damaged America's ability to produce its energy independently, including canceling the Keystone XL pipeline on his first day in office. Earlier this month, Biden signed another order that has dire consequences for the energy sector, effectively blocking any new drilling off the U.S. coast indefinitely. This not only further kneecaps the U.S. oil industry during a time when gas and energy prices are on the rise, but moreover, the way the executive order was written means Trump will have a much harder time undoing it. And we'll talk about that maybe today, probably on a future show. Number 3, escalating overseas wars. Of course, we have the peace agreement come through between the ceasefire, I shouldn't say peace agreement, the ceasefire and hostage deal come through between Hamas and Israel. There are some sticking points there. It's not a done deal yet, but it's very telling that Netanyahu called Trump before calling Biden. He knows who had the effect. But anyway, escalating overseas wars. America's involvement with the ongoing war in Ukraine has been tenuous from the beginning. But under Biden, it has escalated to a Cold War-like proxy war. Neither pleas from Americans in need nor threats from Russia have deterred Biden. He has approved countless aid packages sent to Ukraine totaling billions of dollars. Recently, Biden has decided to up the ante by supplying Ukraine with long-range missiles. Despite Putin's warnings that Russia would consider this an act of war, it's almost like Biden wants to start World War III before handing the reins over to Trump. Now, the goal here, just to be clear, the goal here, and it's not Biden, it's Biden's handlers, Biden's puppet masters. Okay, Biden is just sitting there, oh, sign here, sign. Where's Corn Pop? No, it's the puppet masters that are getting their orders from the globalist elite cabal. And the reason that they want this war to be prolonged, because they have no illusion that Ukraine can win this. They want the war to be prolonged as much as possible because they want to, number one, cover up as much of their sins. Ukraine is a magnet for globalist sins. That's why, hey, where are we going to send Hunter? Let's send him to Ukraine and have him work for Burisma. That was no accident. Why did they get rid of Viktor Shokin? Why did Biden specifically go after Viktor Shokin? Because he was going after corruption. That's a discussion for another day as well. But I would also argue that everything that the Biden regime has done in the last couple of months to try to expand and extend the war against Russia, to use Ukraine as a proxy to do damage, it may have, stay with me on this, it may have actually helped Trump a little bit. Because basically, he's going to be, the more that they go after Russia, the more that they, being the globalist elite cabal and the Biden regime, the more that they support Ukraine and go after Russia, the more clear it will be that Trump's policy will be different. Now, I don't know, it's been conspicuously obscure, we'll say. There's been a lot of ambiguity about what Trump will do with Ukraine. We know that he's going to try to talk to Vladimir Putin, that he's going to try to negotiate peace there. He wants to be the ultimate peacemaker, and I don't think any administration is more qualified to do that than not just this Trump administration, but either Trump administration. Lest we forget, we had the Abraham Accords prior to Biden coming in and having all the debacles that we've had in the Middle East since then. But with that said, the Ukraine situation is one that they're trying to escalate, but not for the sake, they don't think that Putin's going to launch nukes before Trump gets into office, and they definitely don't think that Putin's going to launch nukes after Trump's in office. That would be ludicrous. They do, though, hope that they can buy themselves time to cover up their corruption. And we're not just talking about the Biden regime. We're talking about people like Nancy Pelosi. We're talking about people like, oddly enough, this one comes out of left field, right? But people like Mike Pence, people that have connections in Ukraine. Mitt Romney. Oh, does he have connections in Ukraine? And yes, of course, oddly enough, again, Anthony Fauci. But the Ukraine conspiracies, I could do 2 weeks worth of shows just on Ukraine conspiracies. And we're not just talking about conspiracy theories. Oh, Ukrainians are aliens. No, it's not about that. I'm talking about actual, verifiable, or at least highly likely, real conspiracies. The place is, it's a quagmire. It's a cesspool of corruption. And it's not just the Ukrainian oligarchs. They bring in corruption from everywhere. It's sort of like the Vegas of the world. It's like, what happens in Ukraine stays in Ukraine. And that's what they're trying to do, is make sure that as much of their sins do stay in Ukraine. And then last but not least, and this is the biggest one, installing a shadow cabinet. For years, Glenn has warned of the dangers of the deep state, and its very existence has been denied until recently. Shortly after the election, Democrat Rep. Wiley Nickel made a disturbing speech on the House floor where he proposed the creation of a shadow cabinet designed to hamper the Trump administration and to step in if Trump were removed from office. This shadow cabinet would be composed of Democrat counterpicks to Trump's presidential cabinet members, and they would scrutinize every act made by the Trump administration and propose alternative actions. This just proves that the deep state will do anything to stop President Trump. And it's not just a shadow cabinet. When I first saw that, the first thing that I was thinking of were people like Eric Ciaramella, people that are actually in these departments. We've already heard there was a recent poll that said that as much as half of government employees, White House employees, people that work for the presidential administration, carryovers from the Biden regime, at least half of them are going to oppose Trump in some way. Now, Lord willing, we'll be able to sniff out those who are going to actually act on it. Look, if somebody has an ideology that's different from the president, but they're still willing to go out there and do their job, I don't care. They could be a Democrat, they could be a socialist, they could be whatever. As long as they're doing their job, I don't care. I really don't. Okay. Again, I'm talking about your average day-to-day, mid-level, low-level employee within the government. I'm not talking about the leaders. That's a different story. I'm talking about, the workers, the worker bees. Okay, you can't just say, well, we only want loyalists to be worker bees. You'd never get there. I mean, by the time you actually were able to get halfway through, it would be 4 years, and they'd all end up probably getting fired anyway by the next administration, unless it was J.D. Vance. But we'll talk about that again, hopefully in 3 or 4 years. No, I'm talking about the people that concern me are the people like Eric Charmel, the people that are going to stay in government, continue to work on behalf of the executive branch, and then use their position to try to subvert the Trump administration, try to subvert Agenda 47. And there's going to be a lot of people like that. So it's not just a shadow cabinet. It's not just some deep state plot. It's also the actual deep state worker bees, the people that are in there, and we don't know how many there are, but the people who are in there who will try to stop President Trump from making America great again. Those are big risks, and the Biden regime in their final days are trying to embed as many of those treacherous people into the administration, into permanent seats in the deep state, the deep state worker bees, trying to get as many of them on their side as possible. Please be sure to subscribe to my new Rumble channel over at jdrucker.com/rumble1. That's the number 1. jdrucker.com/rumble1. That's where I'm going to be putting all of my shows going forward.